What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Very Cold Lasagna, the podcast that houses a safe and open listening platform for casual, hot, but mostly cold, and even the dumbest takes on the world of WWE, AEW, the NFL, and the wide world of wrestling and sports in general. I'm your host, DylanLasagna. Welcome to today's episode number 28. And it's going to be an interesting one. We're going back into the old icebox, the deeper depths of the refrigerator, the cooler, whatever you want to call the old icebox, our little retrospective, our back to the past, our little series of retrospectives like we always like to do here on the Very Cold Lasagna podcast. And normally here on Very Cold Lasagna, we like to talk about wrestling and football because those are the two things I'm mainly interested in when it comes to sports. But for this retrospective, for this old icebox, I want to do something that kind of is kind of personal to me. It was kind of like something that happened 5 years ago that really shook me. That kind of, it was kind of baffling. It was kind of shocking. And we're going back in time to talk about it. We're going to talk about this particular incident. And this incident I'm talking about is, you already could tell by the title of the podcast. You can already tell whether you're seeing the thumbnail or you're listening to it right now. I'm talking about my team, my NBA team, the Golden State Warriors, that 73-9 team that broke the record for the best NBA team in history, the 95-96 Chicago Bulls team of 72-10, led by Michael Jordan, Dennis Rodman, and that 73-9 team in 2015, the 2016, led by Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Andre Iguodala, and ironically enough, the head coach, Steve Kerr. That team became the best team in NBA history, at least on paper. They went 73-9, yet you already know what happened at this point in the finals, in the 2016 NBA finals. And it's weird that it was only 5 years ago. It was 5 years since that night on June 19th, 2016, on Father's Day. That was, honestly, I know it's kind of like unrelated to what we're going to talk about. That was the same night as Money in the Bank. When Dean Ambrose, now known as Jon Moxley, cashed in Money in the Bank on Seth Rollins after Seth Rollins just won the WWE title on Roman Reigns. And it was like all three members of the Shield were WWE champions that night. At least there was some part of me that was happy that night. But yeah, what we're going to be talking about here is not going to make me as happy. But anyway, we're going to be talking about this 73-9 Golden State Warriors team and that NBA Finals that us fans, us people watching it got to endure. Now, I'm going to give you all a fair warning. I'm not the super hardcore like analyst or expert or super fan that is going to go like balls deep into this 73-9 Warriors team when we're doing this retrospective retro review. I'm just a casual guy. I'm just a good guy. I'm just a casual fan wanting to talk about this team from the past. So if you're looking for that, I would recommend, going deep in the well of the old icebox and another icebox, if you know what I mean, because the information you're going to get here, the retrospective you're going to get here, is probably not going to be well versed as another one. I'm just warning you now. I'm not the biggest basketball expert, so just keep that in mind. So before we get into it, we always got to shill ourselves here on the podcast, and we always know we like to shamelessly plug ourselves. As always, make sure to subscribe here on YouTube and turn on the notification bell to be notified of each and every episode that comes out on the video version aka the YouTube version. And if you like rants, other new stuff that I don't cover here on the Very Cold Lasagna podcast, or other stuff that I like to talk about that's also not on the podcast, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. But if you like to listen to me on the road or on the toilet when you don't have headphones on, make sure to listen to me on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor FM, and follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Very Cold Lasagna. So let's get into today's topic, or as I like to call it, today's retrospective into the Old Icebox. Retrospective of the 73-9 Golden State Warriors team 5 years later. This, arguably, by many, remains as the best team in NBA history. At least on paper, they're on paper the quote-unquote best team in NBA history. It's not the 95-96 Chicago Bulls team with Jordan and Rodman. That's not the team based on the record. No, it's the Warriors. Apparently. Now, again, I'm a Warriors fan, but we're gonna get into why. But first, let's talk about why they were so good. Why they ended up with the best record in NBA of all time. Well, first of all, you had a two shooting tandem, like a dragon, of Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, aka the Splash Brothers, and they were really good at the 3-point line. And if they weren't shooting threes, they were slicing and dicing defenders and laid it in on the opposing team like it was freaking pieces of cake. So they were having one of, if not their best seasons, from the 3-point line, inside the paint. They were absolutely killing it. They were also breaking like records from threes. Then you also had an elite defensive player in Draymond Green, and to this day he still remains a really good defensive player. You had a really good sixth man in Andre Iguodala, who not only shoot but could play really good defense. And when Steve Kerr needed to insert him in the 3 or 4 slot, and with Draymond at the 5, they were nearly unbeatable with their defense. You saw a good sample of that in the 2015 finals when Steve Kerr decided to switch things up in Game 4 and insert Andre Iguodala into the starting lineup. You know, this was the thing that kind of created a trend with the NBA nowadays. It's kind of more like small ball, depth lineup orientation, where you had Steph, Klay, Harrison Barnes, Draymond Green, and Andre Iguodala in the starting lineup, and they were playing faster and more efficient, honestly. No offense to Andrew Bogut, he's still a good center, but I'm just saying it created a trend of faster, efficient. I don't know if it's efficient, but depending on teams, faster basketball. Speaking of Barnes, he would often have a very good bench that consisted of Sean Livingston, Leandro Barbosa, Festus Ezeli, Mo Spates, aka Maurice Spates, and they would also produce too. They were also producers when Steph, Klay, Draymond, or even Andre, when they needed a rest. So, all in all, you got a pretty good team. When it counted the most. They also started the season 24-0, and this was in spite of not having Steve Kerr coaching the team. Luke Walton was the interim head coach, and they started the season 24-0. They eventually lost to the Bucks, but they proved that their finals win from the previous season, 2015, was no fluke. So they start 24-0. They never lose any games back-to-back consecutively, and they would end up winning 54 games at home, like consecutively, before losing to the Celtics on April Fool's Day in 2016. Some other records that they broke included having the most made threes in a regular season at nearly 1,000. They, again, as I mentioned before, they were the only team so far to not lose any consecutive games at any point during the regular season. So whenever they lost, they would immediately win the next game. So as I also mentioned before, Steph and Clay would also achieve individual records for most threes in the regular season and in a single game, respectively. So I'm not much of a statistics analytics kind of guy, but it's something to point out because they were a really good team. And although they didn't care for the record at first, they didn't care for the 72-10 Bulls record. It became clear near the end of the season that they wanted it. They had it was attainable. This goal of legitimately beating the record, it became reachable, even with losses to the Celtics and the Timberwolves at home. It became attainable. So they eventually get the best record in NBA history. They didn't need to, but they decided to. They already clinched the best record in NBA for the playoffs that season, way out already. But they still wanted to achieve more. They wanted to get that record. So the same night that Kobe Bryant had his last game, the Warriors were hosting the Grizzlies, and they went on to throttle them on their way to achieving said record at 73-9. So overall, in the regular season, they were really, really good. They honestly weren't going to be stopped heading to the playoffs. So Steph Curry would go on to win MVP again that season. Steve Kerr would win Coach of the Year. So they were heading to the playoffs pretty well. They were honestly the favorites to win it all. I honestly thought heading into the playoffs, this is when I was feeble-minded as a fan. I honestly thought they could have swept the entire postseason. They could have. They ended up doing that the next season, but we'll get into that shortly. Now, here's where the problems start for this record-breaking team. This is where the problems start. For as good as they were, they just ran into a lot of unfortunate things. They really ran into a lot of bad things once the NBA playoffs began. Steph Curry goes down in Game 4 against the Rockets in the first round. He slips and has his ankle injured. Was it his ankle or was it something else? I don't remember, but he goes down for a couple of games. He comes back in Game 4 against the next round in the semifinals against the Portland Trailblazers, and he is a big help in closing them out in Game 5. But eventually, as time goes on, it becomes clear that he is not the same Steph Curry as he was in when he was healthy. So in the conference finals against the Thunder, they get into a 3-1 hole. Once the series shifts to OKC, they're getting their asses blown out by Durant and Russell Westbrook. The Thunder was just whooping on their asses. Steph, Clay, they couldn't produce it at all in games 3 and 4 when they were in OKC. So they were quickly in a 3-1 hole. And it got even worse for the Warriors during that series because let's just say there were a lot of nutsack incidents in OKC involving one, Steven Adams, and one, Draymond Green. And yeah, let's say that that nutsack incident would come back to haunt Draymond. But we'll get into that. So even though they failed 3-1, they would eventually rally to win the series. Klay Thompson had that very big Game 6. And then Game 7, it came down to the wire, but Golden State pulls out the dub, and they go on to the finals and face the Cavs in a rematch of 2015. This time, the Cavs have a fully healthy Kyrie Irving. They have a fully healthy Kevin Love. So, with previously, I didn't mention this at the start. Like, the Warriors were in the 2015 finals were inexperienced, but yet they pulled it off. But albeit they were facing a Cavs team that ended up losing Kyrie Irving in Game 1 of the finals, and they didn't have Kevin Love. So essentially, they were even though the Cavs ended up almost making it a series, like you would eventually start to show that the Warriors were able to pull away, even with LeBron James. So now this time around, it's a fully healthy Cleveland team with LeBron, Kyrie, Kevin Love, and even with only 3 days of rest, the Warriors would take games 1 and 2 decisively, but only to get decisively destroyed in Game 3. It was kind of like the pattern in the first two series against Houston and Portland, but they bounced back in Game 4. They beat Cleveland to take a 3-1 series edge themselves, but this was where they take a turn for the worse. This was the game 4 that takes a series turn for the worse for the Warriors. And honestly, this was coming from a team that most people were trying to say were potentially could supplant Jordan's 95-96 Bulls. So even though they won Game 4 to take a 3-1 series edge, near the end, Draymond gets tripped, and in reaction, he hits LeBron James in the dick. And yeah, Draymond gets called for a flagrant one. It was initially called a double technical. Actually, it was, I don't know. I don't remember. Was it a technical on Draymond, or was it a double technical on both James and Draymond? But either way, the result is still in history. Draymond would get a flagrant one for hitting LeBron in the groin, and LeBron James will only get a technical foul for taunting Draymond. So, because Draymond was over the foul limit for flagrant fouls, I don't remember the limit, but he had so many. He had 3. And he exceeded that limit, and as a result, he was suspended for Game 5. A Game 5 that the Warriors needed badly to clinch their second straight NBA title. So, initially, with Game 5, the impact of Draymond's absence didn't hurt the Warriors. Steph and Clay were having a good shooting performance in the first half. But eventually, LeBron and Kyrie would eventually get hot. They would score 40 points each. And yeah, the Cavs would shut down Steph and Clay throughout the second half. And they would pretty much run away with this game to force a Game 6 back in Cleveland. And this game also saw Andrew Bogut go down with a knee injury, and he was pretty much done for the finals, and he was pretty much done as a Warrior, as we would later see. And the momentum would swing even further once we get back to Cleveland for Game 6. Cleveland goes on this 31-11 run in the first quarter. LeBron James and Kyrie Irving are all firing on all cylinders. You even have Tristan Thompson having a really good game. And Cleveland destroys them. Cleveland absolutely throttles them. And Steph Curry, even though he scores 30 points, he is fouled out, and he's also ejected near the end of the game. It was also during this game where the officials were calling very questionable calls. So this was a very Very, very interesting series, but it was also a head scratcher of a game. So Cleveland forces a game 7, and it's a very highly contested game 7. Both teams know they need to win. They need to win. So the energy, both on offense and defense, they were like smash mouthing each other. But as you could tell, as you could have tell by the block, LeBron James Naruto running all the way from one court side to the other. He ran down to block Andre Iguodala's layup when honestly Andre Iguodala should have just dunked it. LeBron blocked Andre Iguodala from one court side to another, and Kyrie Irving shot a clutch 3-point shot over Steph, and those two things would seal the deal for Cleveland clinching its first ever title and prevent the Warriors from truly becoming the best team in NBA history. And that is the reason why for as much as I like the Warriors, for as much as I'm a fan of them, again, be very casual, this is why I can't consider that team as the best ever. It'll always be that Bulls team in 95-96 because they won it. They won it all. They even though Steph and Clay were playing out of this world, so was Jordan, and Jordan willed his team to a championship. There was just so many things that ended up against the Warriors in this playoff run. Like, especially that Draymond dick punch to LeBron James in Game 4. Had he not gotten emotional, had he not gotten reactionary and hit LeBron in the dick in Game 4, the Warriors would have been champions. The Warriors would have ended the finals in 5 games. They would have become back-to-back champions. But we'll get into what else could have happened. What else could have changed history if the Warriors had won. But instead, the dick punch from Draymond to LeBron became a momentum shifter. It allowed LeBron and Kyrie to completely dismantle the Warriors. Even with Draymond coming back for Game 6, he didn't do anything. He didn't do anything in Game 6. They shut his ass down. And LeBron and Kyrie would again have a really good game in Game 6 and Game 7. And I still don't know, even though I don't like the Cavs, I don't know why Kyrie didn't win Finals MVP when clearly he made the most clutch shots in that final series over LeBron. But I don't know, I guess the media, loves to for LeBron. But Game 4 symbolized that Draymond would be the public enemy number 1 for the officials, because he would go on to have technical foul after technical foul, ejection after ejection for the following years. And sure, it's he doesn't have the suspensions and stuff now, but it's still an issue for Draymond. He has an ego issue. He complains a lot and talks too much to the point that he gets ejected. So I also get that Draymond's absence hurt the Warriors in Game 5, but besides Steph and Clay, nobody else produced. Nobody else was able to produce in that potentially close out Game 5, especially Harrison Barnes. He did next to nothing in that game. He couldn't play defense. He couldn't shoot. He didn't do anything in that game. And also, Festus Ezeli didn't do anything in that game. Most Bates didn't do anything in that game. They were hurting. I guess they were apparently hurting in that closeout game. They could have gotten it done if they all produced. Even with Draymond out, they could have just produced. So a lot of things went against their way. in not just game 4, but for the rest of the finals, and that's why they lost. So after they went on to blow a 3-1 lead, and this was after they came back from a 3-1 lead, as most of you know by now. But if you don't, this is why we're doing the Old Icebox. As most of you know by now, Kevin Durant, now former forward for the Thunder and now former forward for the Warriors, he signed with the Warriors on the 4th of July, just weeks after the finals in 2016. And one of the then biggest moves of the 2016 offseason. So everyone was like, what the fuck? Why did Kevin Durant sign here? How were the Warriors able to pull this off? I still don't know to this day. But the Warriors ended up losing Harrison Barnes and Andrew Bogut. But again, they proved why they didn't get to be there that for the next season. That's why they went out to get Kevin Durant. So with Kevin Durant, they eventually proved to be like this unstoppable machine. They eventually, like, even though they had their their issues at first, like on the court, not like, oh, I hate you. They had some chemistry issues at first, but once they got together, or once they were able to gel together, they were unstoppable. And even though Kevin Durant went down with an injury for all of March, and even though the Warriors lost 4 or 5 games, they still were able to get a 24-game winning streak before getting Kevin Durant back shortly before the regular season ended. And they were still able to get the top seed overall in the playoffs, and they actually managed to match their 2015 record at 67-15. So pretty gutsy for Kevin Durant's first season with the Warriors. So in the playoffs, they pretty much swept the Western Conference. They beat Portland, they beat Utah, they beat San Antonio, and yes, we know the controversial box out with Zaza and Kawhi that sent Kawhi to Toronto. So it was all a collision course for the 3 match between the Warriors and Cleveland. This time with a Cleveland team that still had its big 3 and a Warriors team that, yeah, it has a 4-headed dragon now with Curry, Thompson, Durant, and Draymond. So the Warriors would win in 5. Durant wins Finals MVP, and now again, they meet each other the following season, the following finals in 2018. Only this time, LeBron doesn't have anyone. Kyrie Irving gets traded to the Boston Celtics, and the Celtics themselves almost could have faced the Warriors instead of LeBron James and the Cavs. But yeah, this Cavs team with LeBron and the role players gets swept in 4. Durant wins the MVP, and in the following offseason, and after the finals, LeBron goes to the Lakers, where he currently plays now, and he ends up winning another title in 2020 in the Disney bubble. And the Warriors would make their 5th straight finals in 2019, although, yeah, they would meet their own end of sorts. So Kevin Durant goes down with an injury, not just in the conference semifinals against Houston, but also he aggravates that injury in the finals against Toronto, which was a torn Achilles. So Durant opts out of his player option with Golden State and goes to Brooklyn to the Nets. And after a year of recovery, he's trying to get out of this 2-2. At the moment, it's 2-all, but I don't know what the series is at the moment with the Bucks. But he's trying to get to the Nets to the Eastern Conference Finals. So Klay Thompson also went down with an injury in Game 6 of the 2019 Finals, and he would go on to miss 2 straight seasons, not with the ACL injury, but with an Achilles right before the 2020-21 season. As for the Cleveland Cavaliers, they missed the playoffs since LeBron James left, and the only remaining finals member is Kevin Love. But I guess you can at least say the Cleveland Cavaliers have a title, I guess, and you can thank LeBron James for that. So overall, I just always wonder what would have happened if the Warriors won the title in the 2016 finals. What if they won Game 5? What if Draymond Green didn't do what he did in Game 4? What if he even kick Steven Adams in the dick or punch LeBron James in the dick? What if those things didn't happen and the Warriors would have just took care of their business and beat the Cavs? And I don't even know if it would have been 5, 6, 7 games. They just took care of their business. It's always interesting to think about this. What if the Warriors win? Then, in my opinion, had the Warriors won their second straight title, they become the actual best team in NBA history, 73-9. They cap it off with the title. But then also, Kevin Durant probably doesn't go to Golden State. He probably would stay in OKC, try to build a contender there. Or, I don't know, maybe he still goes to Golden State. Maybe he would have been desperate for a title. And as for Cleveland, they probably would have lost LeBron. He probably would have left Cleveland sooner because, that's how he is. He always leaves when he loses. And Kyrie probably would have left too, whether it's by trade or free agency. So that Warriors core that they would have had, that they had, would have gone to probably one more finals or two if Harrison Barnes was better. It was better. Andrew Bogut was fine, but Barnes, my God, that performance in the finals was, for the second half of the finals, for Game 5, 6, 7, was dreadful, man. It was dreadful. That's why your ass got replaced by Kevin Durant in the following offseason. But I digress. So overall, this 2015-16 Warriors team was a great team. It really was. I enjoyed all the games that I saw of this team. Again, I'm just a casual guy talking about this. And I enjoyed this team. They had Steph and Clay at their best. Draymond was performing at an elite level. The Warriors bench was very productive too. But at the end of the day, there's so many things going against their way. From injuries to Steph to controversial moments from Draymond and that badly timed flagrant fouls that ended up changing the outcome of the finals. This was a Warriors team that honestly prevented themselves from winning it all. Sure, they added Kevin Durant afterwards and wound up getting 2 more titles, but honestly, that just softened the blow to make up. I don't know. It's just softened the blow on the fact that this team that won 73 games surpassed the Bulls from 95 to 96 as the best team in NBA history, and yet didn't win a title. So this 73-9 Golden State Warriors team truly could have been the greatest team ever. They could have truly been the greatest NBA team ever. They could have won it all, but the latter, the 95-96 Chicago Bulls, will always be better because in the end, they won the title. They won the title with Jordan. They won the title with Scottie Pippen. They won the title with Dennis Rodman. They won the title with Steve Kerr. This team that Steve Kerr head coached with Steph, Clay, Draymond, Harrison Barnes, Andre Iguodala, Andrew Bogut, Sean Livingston, all those people, all those players. And even though they won the title with Kevin Durant for 2 years after that, this 73-9 team, and this is also the one that came back from a 3-1 deficit against the Oklahoma City Thunder that was led by Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook in the conference finals. They honestly can't be the greatest team, even with the best record in NBA history, because they blew that 3-1 lead. And it honestly still hurts when I talk about it 5 years later. And yeah, it's crazy to believe it's been 5 years since that particular moment happened. When they blew that 3-1 lead, it hurts my heart. But at the same time, what would have happened if they didn't? I don't know. It's always interesting to think about. But anyway, that's it for this episode of Very Cold Lasagna. The Old Icebox is closed once again. And the next episode should be interesting. It should be a fun one to talk about because I got something in store for that too. But what do you guys think about this Golden State Warriors team that went 73-9 in 2015 to 2016? And what do you guys think on how they blew that 3-1 lead 5 years later? It's been 5 years since they did that. And to this day, it still hurts my heart that they did that. But still, I guess they won 2 titles, but I don't know. I guess it just doesn't make it the fact that they had an opportunity to win it all and be the true best team. I mean, but you still got the 95-96 Bull. I still like Michael Jordan. But damn. A lot of what ifs. But anyway, that's it for this episode of Very Cold Lasagna. I'm your host, DylanLasagna. Thank you all for joining me today on this episode. Follow me on social media, on Twitter and Instagram at Very Cold Lasagna. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel for the video versions of the podcast, as well as exclusive extras, rants, and all that good stuff. And follow me and listen to me on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor FM. And as always, keep that lasagna very cold in the fridge with all your takes on the world of wrestling and sports in general. And until next time, peace out.